Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Moneyline MMA coverage. Excuse me as I adjust my camera here. We will be covering today UFC 295, some exciting stuff. This is the card that Jon Jones was going to headline until injury had other decisions for us. Stipe, questionably, curiously, deciding not to fight who's next. Really, to me, giving some telling insight into Stipe's mindset for this fight. I think he knew first that he's retiring after this fight, and second, that he wants the super fight with Jon Jones for the paycheck. I don't think he's as concerned about the belt anymore, to be honest. You could call me crazy, but if he's that concerned about the belt, he would have said, Dana, I don't care who it is. I will fight them. And now, in this case, we have a new co-main event to this card, Sergey Pavlovich, who was the replacement fighter, who, interestingly enough, would have been the individual that Stipe would have fought had he accepted the contract. Stipe sees something in Sergey that isn't in Jon Jones and decides, you know what, I'll wait until next year. Therefore, the UFC calls up Tom Aspinall, and Tom, being the true man he is, would not decline an option for an interim heavyweight belt. That being said, this new heavyweight, the new, what I'm looking for is main event of UFC 295 will be a light heavyweight championship bout between Jiri Prochazka, coming off injury, and Alex Pereira, trying to be a two-time UFC champion, but he's not currently a champion in any other division anyways. So although you can say that it's technically a two-time champion, it's not two-time champion at the same time, and therefore I question the validity of the statement two-time champion when there have been others that have held the belts at the same time that are much more great, in my opinion. But that's for another time, because I quickly want to recap our last week's picks. To me, it's always good to set a base on what we had going on previously. Jose and I had Almeida winning. He got the job done. Thing is, Jose and I also had Gabriel Bonfim, and he got kind of cleaned up by Nicholas Dalby. Now, I'll take a little credit. Bonfim was my two-weight, a little less confident on my end, and I saw that in Dalby. I saw the dog, and hey, this could be a risky fight to bet on. If I'm not mistaken, I even said during the recording last week to not put it in your parlays. So you can thank me, guys, if you had avoided him in your parlays for that reason, because it saved you. Nicholas Dalby got the win. Rodrigo Nascimento, though, did get the job done, as both Jose and I expected. Kyle Baralho, lots of respect to him. Wow, that was a pick that I don't think Jose had, but I had Abus Magomedov getting the win, and Kyle Baralho definitely asserted his dominance, making us wonder the discrepancy between other fight promotions in the UFC. I mean, Magomedov was an easy champion, and now he can't even beat some of the depth fighters in the middleweight division, just saying. That was really it. We had to, they had to write off the Rodolfo Vieira and Armin Petrosian fight because of, I believe, like a sickness. I think it was Vieira got sick or something along those lines, so that fight did not happen. Moving on to what we have going on this Saturday. Before we get too deep into things, I'll just remind any listeners that Jose and I have a unique process of making our picks here, where we pick each of the 5 fights on the main card and assign a weight to them, 1 to 5, with 5 weight being the heaviest, aka the most confident pick of this card. And with that said, we're going to start with my most confident pick of the afternoon, move over to Jose's most confident pick, and then go down the list, making all of our picks for UFC 295 in order of confidence. That being said, my most confident pick of Saturday afternoon, coming to you guys from the Madison Square Garden in New York City. This main card will start at the usual 9 p.m. Central Time slot, and the opening fight is looking to be Matt Frevola versus Benoit Saint Denis. That's a banger. But I am looking to start today by discussing a different fight. In fact, we're going to discuss the second fight that will be on this card following the card opener. In this case, it is Pat Sabatini versus Diego Lopez. And look, this is any listeners to our show are familiar with my interest in Diego Lopez. I had him winning the fight back earlier this year when Jose and I had the pleasure of watching him fight at UFC Nashville, and he got the job done. He was able to submit Gavin Tucker. That was pretty incredible to see live, especially considering I won the money. But to be honest, man, that was a first round, very quick submission. And without beating around the bush, because I don't want to ramble for too long, I've got Pat Sabatini as my 5-weight pick here. I'm very confident in Pat Sabatini getting the job done here. I don't believe Pat has ever been submitted in his UFC career or MMA career in general. In fact, I can confirm he has never been submitted, and I just don't see that being the case here against Diego Lopez. And to be honest, I think the striking differential is going to be huge. I think Pat Sabatini lands a lot of damage on Diego, who finds himself on his back for most of this fight. And admittedly, Diego is dangerous on his back. But again, Pat Sabatini's never been submitted. And he's got those short little stocky arms. He's a 5'8" dude with 70-inch reach. He's a stocky dude, kind of like me. You know, a little stocky dude who's got short limbs. It's hard to grab a hold of this dude's wrist and keep control of it. So I just think the little battles in the wrestling situations are going to be won by Sabatini, in part because of his strength and smaller size in this case. Usually we're talking about reach advantage. In this case, I think reach disadvantage will favor him better, because no matter the reach disadvantage, he will be better standing than Diego Lopez. So for those reasons, man, easily 5-weight pick on Pat Sabatini. What do you got, Jose?
Yeah, for this one, Nick, I agree with you. I have Pat Sabatini as my 5-weight as well. And reason being is it's ultimately going to come down, I think, to the striking, because both guys are actually really good at grappling. Diego Lopez as well, out of his 22 wins, 12 of them are via submission, and half of those are arm bars alone. So that's definitely something I think that he definitely has going for him, is just a strong arm bar game. Where Pat Sabatini, I think he can submit Diego Lopez in any way. He's a little more versatile. He's gotten submissions, rear naked chokes. He's gotten heel hooks. He's just a little more diverse in the way he's approached his submission game. So if he were to get a submission on Diego Lopez, I think if someone were to get submitted, I would say I think it would be Pat Sabatini winning via submission more likely. But again, I think both guys, even on the UFC page, doesn't really show much of the grappling for Diego Lopez. He has not been in the UFC as long as Pat Sabatini, so that's partially why. And that for that reason alone, I think that Pat Sabatini, he's just had overall more experience in the UFC, and I think that it is going to come down him winning, and I think almost unanimous decision if he doesn't get a submission win. Diego Lopez, he absorbs quite the amount of strikes per minute. He absorbs 4.92 significant strikes per minute, which is quite a lot. So I think if it comes down to the striking game, I do see Pat Sabatini winning this one, mostly via unanimous decision and via strikes. What are your thoughts, Nick?
Yeah, man. Honestly, I pretty much agree. I was a little interested to hear your statement that Pat Sabatini, if anything, would win by submission. And honestly, you could be onto something. That's not at all what I'd be betting on. But it is interesting to think about. You would look at Diego Lopez as the kind of guy who gets a submission or loses. I mean, that's at least how I look at him. And that's how it's been the case. He's lost 2 unanimous decision fights. Now, I'll give it to him. It was a late-minute replacement against a really good fighter in Movsar Evloev. So to lose that fight is not a bad thing at all. He gave a really good shot to that fight and almost got Movsar in a couple submissions. But that fight also just really goes to show the striking discrepancy. And if a guy can avoid the submissions from Diego, I think he's lethal. I think Pat Sabatini is going to be able to do that. And with that said, he just came off a submission win again against Lucas Almeida. Not really a pushover kind of guy. So I just got to say, yeah, Pat Sabatini's on a tear, actually. Having only lost 1 fight in the UFC so far. Diego Lopes, he's 28 years old. He's got room for improvement. I think if he can upgrade his striking, if he can work on that and get his striking different. I mean, right now he is landing 2.1 strikes and absorbing almost 5. He's at 4.92. That is a nasty bad. Not a nasty good, a nasty bad differential. That is pathetic. How many strikes he's not able to land on his opponents. I think that's going to show on Saturday.
Yeah, so ultimately, yeah, I think again we both agree that it's going to be coming down more to the striking game, and when it comes to picking one, I think you and I both. It's safe to say Pat Sabatini, he's our strongest weight. He's both our 5 weight. So that being said, I'm down to move on to the next weight, Nick, our 4 weight.
I agree. My only other note is just that I think Sabatini by decision would be my ultimate guess on that. But in the end, Sabatini, yeah, for sure is going to be the lock of the week for Moneyline MMA. On to your 5 weight.
And then,
But that was your
my
5 weight.
as well.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah, so onto our 4 weight. And for the fourth weight, this is for me. It's the lightweight bout between Benoit Saint Denis and Matt Fravella. Right now, Saint Denis is the betting favorite at -220, while Matt Fravella is the betting underdog at +168. Both these guys, Matt Fravella, he's one of I believe Sarah Longo's guy too, and he's trained with Aljamain Sterling as well. And they've talked nothing but good things about him, and he's a killer. Even though like when he came to the UFC too, he's early on he lost to Arman Sarzukian and Terrence McKinney, but he's actually a legit killer, and he's come back and bounced back with 3 first-round wins, all via the form of KO/TKO. Dude is extremely dangerous. But on the other hand, Benoit Saint Denis as well. We've talked about him most recently on UFC Fight Night 226 when it was Gane versus Spivak, and he himself won via TKO in 2 rounds. And I think he's been looking a little more impressive, a little more consistent than Matt Fravella. So that's why for this, my 4-weight, I got Benoit Saint Denis. I think overall, he's been in the UFC just a little bit longer, but I'm not going to count as much because actually about the same, I would say. I think he's just overall his the way he's lost is not as bad as Matt Fravella. Benoit Saint Denis has never been finished, and he only lost to decision. I don't know if Matt Fravella, if it goes beyond the distance, if it goes to the distance, I don't know if Matt Fravella is going to win that department. We haven't seen him in a 3rd round since 2019, and though he can do it, I think right now he's more maybe like a early on finisher. Where in terms of Benoit Saint Denis, I think he can get the job done within the distance or even by unanimous decision. So for that, I have him as my 4-weight. What are your thoughts on this fight, Nick?
This one is one that I struggled with, and I kind of went back and forth on it. So it led to me placing it as my 1-weight in confidence. So I do have a pick for this fight, but it is my least confident pick on my card. And I have chosen Matt Favola, the dog, in this case. I think Matt Favola is definitely a bigger striking threat. Just looking at things statistically, he may not land as many strikes, but he also absorbs a lot less strikes per minute. And I just think that is where I'm leaning. He's coming off 3 straight first-round knockouts, and one of them being Drew Dober. I mean, let's just go ahead and say that Drew Dober is one of the bigger knockout artists of his division, right? He either gets the KO or seems to lose. And Matt Favola said, I'm here to KO you, buddy. And I just took a lot of respect out of that. I think Benoit Saint Denis definitely impressively won against Thiago Moises, no doubt about it. But Thiago Moises is no amazing. He's like 17-7 in his career fighting in MMA. So Thiago Moises is definitely not a pushover, but I just don't think Benoit Saint Denis has found any of his opponents to be as good as Matt Favola is going to be. Matt Favola has never been submitted in his professional MMA career, and I just kind of seem to now, don't get me wrong, I understand that Benoit Saint Denis is coming off a KO win, but I just feel like in this fight, his path to victory is going to be wrestling, and I'm not sure that's going to work against the steamroller Favola. So, I don't know. That being said, man, it's not as confident as you are, but I do have Favola getting either the decision or the KO win on this one. 1-weight.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, yeah, you see Matt. Okay. Yeah. I then again, yeah, Matt Favola, that's the way I do see him winning too. If it goes beyond the first round, not so much anymore. But within the first round, he's definitely live for a KO/TKO. I definitely believe that. And when it comes to the grappling department, I agree. I think Benoit Saint Denis, he has a takedown average of 4.72, while Matt Fravella has a 2.26 takedown average. I think, and then I'm also Benoit Saint Denis takedown defense 80%. He just has overall better grappling than Matt Fravella. So I think that ultimately he's gonna win most likely via unanimous decision, and it's just gonna be overall, um, just I think out grappling. I mean, just getting the punches when he can and not forcing it. If it, but he's definitely live any of the 3 rounds to get a finish. Whereas Matt Fravella, I think he is probably the most live just the first round. So for that, I do have. That's why I have Benoit Saint Denis as my 4 weight.
That's interesting, man. I really, I'm looking at the fight. Matt Frivola went the distance with Arman Sarukian a couple of years ago on the Poirier versus McGregor card. He went the distance. Arman Sarukian takes him down 10 times. 0 submission attempts. I think that says a lot about Frivola's ability to defensively wrestle, and I think Arman Sarukian is pretty well respected at this point. He does not have a submission in the UFC, but his wrestling is a big part of his game plan at 3.4 takedowns per fight right now, at least in 3 rounds. So that being said, Benoit Saint Denis could potentially see that and go for a similar game plan. Let's take him down and go from there. And that's definitely going to need to be his game plan to get the win, in my opinion, because if he's going to start going for shots in the first round and getting a little reckless, he could get himself KO'd.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Fravella definitely has sharp boxing for sure. I would say that his hands alone, beyond like breaking down striking, I would say his hands alone, besides the kicks, are definitely lethal. I've heard Matt Serra and them talk about it. That the way he hits pads, like, it's definitely. I like no without a question and doubt that first round. That's the only one I'm worried about. Is that first round mostly.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's great information for the listeners. I think that's honestly one of the sleeper like fights of the night in terms of like performance bonus or something. I really think these dudes are going to duke it out. And others, it's hard to beat the main event in terms of intensity. But wow, I think these dudes are going to start the main card off with an absolute bang. So that being said, Jose's got his 4 weight on Benoit Saint Denis. I have my 1 weight on Matt Frivola. Let's go ahead and move on to my 4 weight pick of the afternoon. This will be the third fight that we're discussing for UFC 295. And I'm going to take us without any further delay to the event of the evening. Jerry Prochazka is returning from injury. Alex Pereira is trying to become a 2 division belt holder, not at the same time. I will make sure to clarify that Alex Pereira was a middleweight champion, no longer is, left the division after taking a loss, and looking to be a 2 division champion. I feel like that wording is a little bit inconcise, right? Because we say Henry Cejudo is a 2 division champion. Like, okay, yeah, he held the belts at the same time. No, that's not the case with Mr. Alex Pereira. Not trying to take anything away, but he has not held any belts at the same time. He's coming off a split decision win against Jan Blachowicz. This will be interesting to see how his light heavyweight career pans out, as that was a really close fight. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see them fight again at some point in the future, because my 4 weight pick of the afternoon is Alex Pereira to win the vacant and to what I would consider the official light heavyweight belt, because Prochazka is finally coming back. I know Jamal Hill had to secede his belt or whatever due to injury, but look, Jamal Hill didn't own the belt in the first place because Jiri Prochazka preceded it or whatever. So, in my opinion, this is the true fight for the belt. This is not interim. This is not some weird shit. This is Jiri Prochazka versus Alex Pereira for the baddest. They're really the second baddest man on the planet behind the heavyweight champion. So yes, if I haven't already said it already, Pereira is my 4 weight pick here. I think he will be taking the belt officially from Prochazka, officially in the UFC. He is a minus 138 favorite. Prochazka's plus 108. And honestly, when I looked at those lines, I was a little surprised. I was coming into this thinking I'd be able to get Alex Pereira at a little bit of a discount. He's coming off a split decision win. It was kind of close, blah, blah, blah. Jerry Prochazka is also good. I thought people were going to be riding the pine and he'd be minus 150. That's not the case for either one of these fighters. And Jerry right now is plus 108. I think that's exactly where this line really should be. Prochazka, I don't have to sit here and explain it. He's been coming off what everybody wants to say is the worst shoulder injury of all time. Okay, yeah, right. Yeah, right. Okay, it's the worst one you've seen. You started last year. Doc. I don't really think that that was the worst shoulder injury that's ever occurred to a human being in the universe. But that being said, I still don't think he's going to win the fight. I think Prochazka, along with that and some ring rust, I'm just not sure. Like he's fighting a completely new opponent, and Pereira brings power. I'm just not sure Prochazka's going to be ready for. I get that Prochazka's been in there and done that with like Volcano Zedmir, Dominic Reyes, sure. But I mean, come on, that was first of all 2-3 years ago, and second of all, his most recent win was a fight he should not have won against Glover Teixeira. He should not have choked him out. Glover was going to win that by decision, and Glover was going to win that relatively handedly by decision until the last minute of the fifth round. Definitely impressive stuff from Jerry Prochazka, but I don't see that being the case against Alex Pereira, man. I think Alex Pereira is going to come in there and absolutely use his power to his advantage. I remember one of the biggest narratives going into the Jan Blachowicz fight is that Alex Pereira is going to get wrestled. He's going to get wrestled so badly it's not even going to be close. And sure, he did get wrestled. He got controlled for about half the fight, 7.5 minutes. But 3 of 8 on takedown attempts was Jan Blachowicz. I think if Alex, that proves that he's continuing to work on it. Obviously, his mentorship or whatever you want to call it with Glover's helping. So I think Alex Pereira is going to continue to work at it. I don't think wrestling's really a factor here, and I like Alex Pereira standing up with a guy who hasn't been in the ring in a couple of years, officially at least, and with a guy who barely could stand up with Glover Teixeira before his injury. So that being said, give me Alex Pereira. Sorry for rambling. That was probably a little too long. I should have let Jose speak. So yeah, Jose, what do you got?
Yeah, so for this one, man, I just can't believe how people have forgotten the former champ already, Yuri Prochazka, because the reason is that dude is really, really good. Yeah, he's been gone for a while just because of his surgery. But let's not forget, yeah, that last fight against Glover Teixeira, and I want to say I have Yuri, he's my three weight, and I see a lot of value with him being the underdog. He was at one point a plus 130 underdog, but as we speak right now, he is a plus 108 underdog. And I think it's just going to keep thinning out because I think people are going to remember this dude is extremely creative when it comes to his striking. Like that knockout on Dominic Reyes, that spinning, he was just flowing and almost dancing at one point, and just it just he's is so in rhythm and in tune with his striking. And then when he goes against like a grappler like Glover Teixeira, he did encounter some problems, but at the end of the day, he like you said, he was on his way to a loss, but at the end of he just pulled out a submission win himself over Glover Teixeira, one of the best grapplers that that division has seen. So, and he did that late in the fifth round, and that's actually stuff that like people like GSP would do. That's just like what champions I think are made of. That's the type of adversity that I think Yuri Prochazka he's faced and overcome, and I think that's why he's going to be the champion at the end of the day. As and while Alex Pereira, on the other hand, he has been most recently knocked out by Israel Adesanya just as of last year. So that's just one rule I like, something I kind of take into consideration as well. He has been knocked out within the last year, as opposed to Yuri Prochazka. He's actually not been knocked out at all since 2015, and since then he's just been riding a phenomenal winning streak, and he's he's known to be a finisher with the hands. Alex Pereira has obviously phenomenal striking. Both guys, it's going to be a great kickboxing match for sure. Yuri Prochazka throws 5.77 significant strikes that he lands per minute, while Alex Pereira 5.11. And Yuri does absorb a bit more hits than Alex Pereira as well, but Alex Pereira, he is just a phenomenal kickboxer, as we all know. Don't need to really go too much into that. And when it comes to the wrestling department, I think both are pretty close in terms of when it comes to grappling. Yuri, again, he did get that submission win. I don't think that's I don't think he's going to be trying to go for a submission over Alex Pereira. That's what I truly believe. I think he's going to probably try to implement a similar game plan that Jan Blachowicz implemented and try to out wrestle him, but more control and actually just start letting the hands loose. I think that's ultimately what he needs to do, and I think he's going to do it. And him as the underdog, it's just hard for me to shy away from that. And so that being said, I'm going to go with the former champ Yuri Prochazka, and he's my three weight for this one, Nick.
Fair points, and I liked some of your argument there. I do have some reservation. Part of what I should say is part of what held me from putting Pereira as my 5 weight is the dog in Jerry Prochazka. We've seen it. It's clearly there. He is truly a warrior. I don't think Jerry is ever going to give up until he is completely unconscious or like can't even move the limb anymore, right? Or the ref has to call it off. This is over with, buddy. You know what I'm saying? That's there's no doubt about that. Jerry will bring it, and he will give everything he has. Unlike a lot of human beings, and that's definitely a respectable trait, and that's part of why Alex Pereira is not my 5 weight here, but in the end, I think you also speaking about his injury and coming back made me think in my head like, where would I be on this fight if there was no such thing as his shoulder injury? His shoulder injury, of course, from Jiri. Like, if Jiri was exactly who he was as we saw him in the Glover fight, no injuries or nothing, and Alex was the same as he's always been, right? How would this fight go? This and that. And I still kind of feel the same about it. I feel like I'm not giving too much stock to his shoulder injury. I doubt that it's the worst shoulder injury that's ever happened. Like I said at the beginning of my rant, it's not that I think that Jiri is going to just be labored from his shoulder all of a sudden and he can't do anything. I think we're probably not even gonna be able to tell the difference between him and the guy he was before it. I just think Alex Pereira is the real deal. I think Alex Pereira deserves a whole bunch of respect because he's going to come in here and knock out a guy that nobody else could knock out. And yeah, that's what I think is going to happen on Saturday night.
And ultimately, yeah, I agree with you in that aspect that someone's going to get knocked out. I think just two guys putting them in the cage. I'm actually worried that they're both going to respect each other straight so much to the point where it may not be an exciting fight, kind of like Francis and Derek Lewis. I hope that's not the case. We have seen it before. Anderson Silva and Damian Maia respected, different styles too, respected his jiu-jitsu so much that it was just a boring fight. Or even Adesanya and Anderson Silva when they fought too. It was technical, but it wasn't the craziest fight at all. So I think
Yeah.
that could be. I'm hoping that's not what we get.
That's a great call out, man. I think there's an actual decent chance for a sad main event. I think especially because it's being expected to back up what was going to be a John Jones card, and now this is what people are paying for in the pay-per-view. This is no longer the co-main. And you're right. I think both guys are going to respect the shit out of each other. And unless there's some sort of trash talk that occurs in the press conferences or something between now and the fight, I would be, you know what, man? That's a great observation. I really would bet that the fight goes at least 2.5 rounds. What do you think? Do you think that? I don't know, man. All I'm trying to think is like for sure it doesn't end in round one. I think for sure they feel each other out in round one. Maybe there's a round two knockout, but yeah,
Oh yeah, the first round. I definitely think the first round. I'd be surprised if they pick it up quick in the first round. I think it's going to be possibly a good feeling now round for sure. Even a little into the second round is like late second round. I can see them loosening up and letting the crazy kicks and punches start swinging for real and taking a little more risk.
yeah,
But
dude,
but yeah,
that
I'm excited and I want it. I actually do want some stoppage of some sort, even if it's a submission. I definitely don't want the 5 round slow fight. That's for sure.
Me either. Me either. We're just trying to prep you guys that are listening because, I'm convinced that the opening fight to the main card could be the best, most banger fight of this whole card. So yeah,
For
that being said, oh wait, go ahead.
No, I was yeah, for real. It's sometimes that's how it is. Sometimes those smaller fights are the ones you least expected are the ones that are just killers. So I hope they set a good pace though. But regardless, I hope the show gets ended off, an exciting foot. Whether someone, all I know is we're gonna have a new champion. That's for sure, which is gonna be
Dude,
crazy.
let's just hope because the light heavyweight belt has been effed up, for the
Kind
lack
of
of a better
cursed.
term. Yeah, yeah, we can't even give the belt because it's a majority split draw. Like, what is this crap, man? So can we just get an
And then two
exciting one?
champions vacate back to back. It's
Yeah, it's just
crazy.
been a mess since John Jones has left and vacated himself. And when you were speaking of fights too, I was like, oh God, please tell me it's not going to be like Rose Namajunas versus Carla Esparza.
Mm-hmm.
God, that was a
Yeah.
title fight too. God, what were there 8 strikes landed? Oh my God, that belt should have been vacated immediately, forcefully by Dana.
Parisian never came in just like, nah, we're not.
Mid fight,
Damn.
midway through the 5th round, he just unlocks the cage. All right, I'm calling this off. You girls suck. The belt's vacant. See ya.
Division division is closed.
We're both paying you your show up bonus, and you're out of here. I don't even know, has Rose fought since then? Yeah, she's fought once, I think,
Yeah, I think she took a loss to
and it was a loss. I do. Yeah, I think it was a loss. Ha. Well, now the petty part of me feels like she deserved it. So, but she is a Milwaukee lady, so I gotta give her some credit for
yeah.
that. But yeah, that being said, without any further delay, that was my 4-weight on Alex Pereira and Jose's 3-weight on Jiri Prochazka. And that covers Jose's 5, 4, and 3 weights. Let's move down to Jose's 2-weight.
Yes. So for my two weight, this is the co-main event now, and this is for the heavyweight interim strap, and between
Yeah.
the polar bear Sergey Pavlovich versus Tom Espinal. Right now, Sergey, he is the right now I'm seeing him as minus 106, while Tom Espinal is a minus 120. So right now, Tom Espinal is the betting
Yep.
favorite, and ultimately that's who I'm going with in this one. I'm going with the slight favorite, Tom Aspinall. Dude is extremely athletic. He's only 30 years old, and he does have that technical loss to Curtis Blades, but it was that knee injury that he was out for a while now. And but coming back, he just came and exploded and got a first round TKO right away. And ultimately, that's kind of how the Polish player. That's kind of how he fights himself. Sergey Pavlovich. He kind of can be really explosive and just start throwing heavy bombs. So that's something I'm definitely going to say is that this fight is not going to go to distance. I don't think this fight is going to make it past. Definitely, it's going to be within the 2.5 rounds. There's just no way I see this even making it out of the first round. Both guys, like especially, oh my God, Sergey Pavlovich. How many fights in a row has he already had? Even though he lost to Alistair Overeem, even his loss to Alistair Overeem was in the first round. So all his fights since 2017 have been nothing but the first round, and he's just explosive and throws heavy punches, which is exactly what Tom Aspinall just did against Marcin Tybura earlier this year. Just explosive, so that's what I see it's going to be. It's just going to be them standing in front of each other, and then at some point, boom, someone's going to start throwing haymakers, just exactly how Sergey Pavlovich and Tai Tuivasa did when they went against each other. Just immediately, Tai Tuivasa knew he had to start throwing some bombs too, and they just didn't hit the way just as hard as Pavlovich. So it ended it right there, and that's why I have Tom Aspinall as my 2-weight, because it's ultimately just going to be who's going to hit first and the hardest. Ultimately, that's truly what I believe. Whoever hits the hardest first, I think is just going to win it from there. Because once they start hitting, they're gonna do the same thing. Just start pressing forward, and put the pressure on, and just let haymakers fall through. So for this one, I do have Tom Aspinall as my 2-weight because I'm not as confident, because what he can do to Sergey Pavlovich, he can do to Tom Aspinall as well. So for that one, yeah, I got Tom Aspinall as my 2-weight. What are your thoughts on this fight, Nick?
Man, I agree with your assertions and your prediction on the fight all the way up until Tom Aspinall getting the win. I've got my 3-weight on Sergey, the polar bear, here to get the interim heavyweight belt. And kind of going back to what you were saying, if they're standing up and fighting each other face to face like I expect them to, and like you predicted, I'm in love with having Pavlovich in that matchup. Pavlovich has 15 career knockouts. Aspinall 9, and I just think Pavlovich. They've both been KO'd once, but Tom Aspinall, I'm not sure. No, that counted as a disqualification. He was knocked out. But both dudes being knocked out were like pretty inconsequential, and or 5+ years ago, and or being knocked out by a guy like Alistair Overeem. That is crazy. I think Sergey Pavlovich having double his strikes landed than strikes absorbed speaks volumes. And Tom Aspinall also has a very great looking strikes landed, but there is no metric for striking power. I would strongly contest that currently in UFC, no one strikes stronger and more powerful than Sergey Pavlovich. I don't think Aspinall is ready for that. I just don't. He did fight and knock out Sergey Spivak. Sergey Spivak did not land a punch. I want to see Aspinall past, you could be right. Maybe this fight doesn't go past the first round. I want to see him past the first round. We haven't gotten a chance to more than once. And that was against Andrei Arlovsky when he got a submission win anyways. Pavlovich, also another note, his what would you call foundation of fighting is in Greco-Roman wrestling. I'm pretty relatively confident that wrestling won't become a factor here. And if Aspinall wants to make it a factor, I think Sergey is going to be able to defensively wrestle well enough to not be submitted. I'm with you. I'm with you that they stand up, they strike with each other, and I'm just on the other side. I think Sergey is a stronger striker right now that is just going to take Pav. I mean, he's also got like a 6 to 7 inch reach advantage because he's got like arms like Stefan Struve. Like, it's crazy. His arms are crazy. I don't know. So for those reasons, man, give me Sergey Pavlovich. Coming off of a knockout of even Derek Lewis, like, come on. I feel like that's just money.
No, yeah, I definitely the big thing that scares me is his 6 inch reach advantage. But Tom Aspinall is also slightly taller. He's 6'5", Sergey's 6'3". So I think it kind of equals out in that aspect to some degree. But both guys, heavyweights, are, the numbers they're throwing for significant strikes for heavyweight division. And you're probably right. Sergey Pavlovich, he probably does throw maybe harder punches than Tom Aspinall, possibly. But when it comes to the grappling department, I actually think Tom Aspinall he could possibly even get a submission in the second round against Pavlovich, because he has done that in the past before, and he only does have 3 submissions alone. He does show that it's a threat, where Sergey, he does not have any submission wins on his record. But you mentioned he does have strong wrestling, but I don't know. Maybe the UFC website is just not accurate right now. But they don't show him having any takedown ever really. They don't have Sergey Pavlovich really ever attempting any takedowns, just having takedown defense. Where Tom Aspinall, his takedown average is 3.7 per 3-round fights, and thus far he has 100% takedown accuracy. So at least for the time being they've been in the UFC, it shows like Tom Aspinall has, I guess, at least been somewhat a bit more successful when it comes to grappling. He's been in the UFC since 2020, and Sergey's been in there since 2018. So Tom Aspinall's already 2 years under and being in the UFC, compared to Sergey Pavlovich, and he's showing already slightly better stats in grappling. For that reason being is I think that he's my pick. He's my 2-weight. I see him. I think someone's going to be knocked out, but he does I think throw an extra threat of going for that submission over Sergey Pavlovich. So for this one, I'm not as confident. So I do have him as my 2-weight for that reason.
Sounds good. Yeah, that's really interesting because I think we cover the 2 different ways to look at this fight, similar to the main event, Prochazka Pereira. I think if you're on the side of Prochazka not being the same person as he was earlier before the injury, then you take my side and you go Pereira. If you think Prochazka is going to come back just as good or even better, then you side with Jose. And I think similarly to this, if you think Pavlovich is the better striker and is the strongest striker in the UFC, I think you got to side with him here. There's great value, and I get what your point is about Aspinall landing a lot of takedowns, average-wise, and that's where I really wish we could have seen more between him and Curtis Blades, because sadly that fight ends in like 10 seconds. It would have been fascinating to see, because that's a really good litmus test, of wrestling, and Curtis Blades is a guy that Sergey's just coming off of KOing. So If we're going to say that Curtis Blades is a great wrestler, Sergey had no issue. It was done. First round. Easy. Get out of here, buddy. So, if you think, like me, that Sergey can deflect takedowns and has the strength to knock out Tom Aspinall, you take my side. But there's a strong argument to say that Tom Aspinall, and I'd agree with people who say Tom Aspinall is the better MMA fighter. Yeah, I feel like it'd be crazy for me to not agree because he's shown that he can get KOs. He's shown that he can get submissions, against some of the best. So it's not as much that I think Sergey Pavlovich is the better overall MMA fighter. Sometimes a better MMA fighter doesn't win, and I don't think that's going to happen here. I think it's just a strict, striking and damage difference.
No, yeah, for sure. So, needless to say, I think we at least can both agree that this fight is most likely not going to go to distance. That's for sure. Being the big boys,
Oh man,
someone I think is going to go out.
let's hope so. Let's hope so for sure. That'll be exciting. So that was my 3-weight on Pavlovich and Jose's 2-weight on Tom Aspinall, which leads us to one remaining fight on the card, and that's going to be my 2-weight. We've discussed everything but my 2-weight and Jose's 1-weight. So in a moment, I'll let you guys listen in from Jose on his pick. But it will be between Jessica Andrade and Mackenzie Dern. Jessica Andrade having fought another fighter, curiously enough, having last fought in the Nashville card, just like Diego Lopez. A couple fighters from that card are meeting up again on this card. I believe at the time Andrade was somewhat last minute. I forget how long, but got kind of, decimated. It was a second round chokeout by Tatiana Suarez, confirming that Jessica Andrade, after her, I would say somewhat of a tear, she's kind of always been struggling at keeping a good win streak going because it always gets derailed at some point, but definitely a former champion. Jessica Andrade now 3 straight losses, getting a tough spot here against Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Dern minus 210 as the favorite. Jessica Andrade plus 162. How far she has fallen. Jessica Andrade is the smaller lady in this fight, and here the real difference is kind of going back to some of the previous nuances, may I say, of some of the other fights on this card. Do you take a jiu-jitsu aspect? Or do you take a striking aspect? I think Andrade, to get the win here, is going to have to bring it to Mackenzie aggressively in striking department, all while not over-aggressing and getting taken down, because Mackenzie Dern will choke out Jessica Andrade. There's no doubt about it. Jessica Andrade has been choked out 4 times in her career, and the most recently coming earlier this year. So it's clear that Andrade has holes. Aaron Blanchfield also choked her out in the second round. Andrade has been struggling to make it the distance in a fight that she's won. But granted, she's been pretty active, so you got to give her credit. In 2023 alone, I believe this will be her 5th fight. You got to give her credit for continuing to come in here and fight. And that's part of a knock, though, in my opinion, against her is the fact that she's continuously trying to just fight. Is she trying to get through her contract? Is she needing money that bad? Like, it doesn't seem in a fight like against Tatiana Suarez, it just didn't seem like Jessica Andrade. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like, maybe she's lost some confidence. Maybe she just doesn't, she thinks like, I'm just not as good as I used to be. But she's not really old. I mean, Jessica Andrade is 32. She really should be in her UFC, like, being near her prime. So it's just a weird, you just wonder what's going on. And I personally have no interest in a fighter that's having what seems to be some mental issues or some personal things derailing the professional side of the career. So my tweet is on Mackenzie Dern. I think Mackenzie Dern will outlast the striking aspect of Andrade and choke her out within the distance.
Oh yeah, Nick. So with this one, I agree. I actually have Mackenzie Dern. She's obviously my 1-way, but I'm just not that confident in her as well. Even though Jessica Andrade is riding a 3-fight losing streak, I always think she's live still. Especially in that first round. As of lately, she's got that knockout power, and she throws a high volume of punches. It's just she's someone that's willing to get hit to throw one back. She absorbs 5.34 significant strikes per minute, which is more than Mackenzie Dern. So Jessica Andrade, she does not care if she's going to get hit. She just wants to come at you and try to put lights out. But that's a problem if you can't do that, because then, once you start to figure that out and can avoid it, and you show a little more technical side in terms of the striking, you can beat her, and you can then start working your way to get a submission or straight up knock her out yourself, which her last three opponents have all proven that they can do. And she actually, even though Mackenzie Dern, she has phenomenal jiu-jitsu, Jessica Andrade, she has great jiu-jitsu as well. Just because she has more experience, she has eight of her wins come via submission alone, while Mackenzie Dern only has 7 via submission. So Jessica Andrade, it just seems like as of lately, within her last 3 fights, her submission game, she just let her guard a bit down. She got rear naked choke and then got guillotined. I think, she just needs to protect her neck. Essentially, that's what it's got to be. She's not really getting armbarred or heel hooks or anything like that. It just seems like it's her neck and the way she's positioning it. So if a good coach will definitely have her adjust that and make sure she's not getting rear naked choked or guillotine. It's just really a major part of it is head positioning, and the way she fights, she likes to press you against the cage, which her taller opponents, that's why they're able to sink in and like a guillotine choke, most like Tatiana Suarez. And it's just the way she likes to press forward, and again, she's not afraid to get hit, and with that mentality, she's also not afraid to pretty much, if you grab a hold of her neck or something, just to go for a submission. So I don't know if it would be almost foolish for her to kind of approach that same way in this fight against Mackenzie Dern. So that's why I have Dern as my number 1. I think Dern, she's slowly been getting better technically on the feet. Her striking has just been looking better and better, as she proved with her most recent win over Angela Hill as well. And again, she has strong jiu-jitsu. So if Mackenzie Dern shows up on her A game, I think she can get a win any way she wants, whether it's KO, whether it's decision or submission. But that's if Jessica Andrade has done nothing to improve herself, because I do believe Jessica Andrade has the potential to still be dangerous and even be champion again. She's only 32 years old, and look at the experience she has already. 24 wins and 12 losses. That's just ridiculous. 36 fights overall is just nuts. And I think she has the potential to climb back up to the top, and it's happened, People have done it after four losses in a row. So it's definitely doable. So it depends which version of Jessica Andrade shows up. As of lately, I've the last few fights I'm pretty sure I've been betting on her. And except I think the last one against Tatiana, but the 2 before, I've been mostly for Jessica Andrade, and she's just been letting me down. So I don't know if I want to go for her again, because I feel like she may let me down again. And that being said, I do have Dern taking the win, but again, I'm not as confident. So Dern is my 1 weight, Nick.
Man, hearing you talk about it, I'm more confident in Mackenzie Dern. I think Andrade, you made the point. She's 24-12, 36 professional. That's only professional fights, and she's 32 years old. That's a lot. That is a lot. I don't think that's very common. I think it is possible that Jessica Andrade is burnt out. I think it's possible that she's maybe not as in love with MMA as she used to be. I think it's possible she's not giving it a 110% effort on a basis that it would take to get wins in the upper level of the UFC. And to be honest, I have absolutely zero interest in picking or betting on that side at all until I see that change. By no means am I out here putting hundreds of dollars on Mackenzie Dern. I think women's MMA is very volatile. We've seen it happen with Valentina losing and some of the greats of women's MMA being decimated or at least dismantled from their thrones recently. And I think it seems to be a little bit more parity in the women's side of MMA, where winners kind of seem to be a little bit more random at times. Kind of just seems to go off of a little bit of a, one kick difference, one punch difference, instead of the men's side of things. It's hard to just make a guy quit after one kick. And I'm not saying ladies quit after one kick, but I think it's definitely a difference in women's MMA with stuff like that. And I am concerned about Jessica Andrade and her mindset at this point. And I'm trying to make the point that I would not be picking or betting on that mindset until it's proven itself to be improved. At least right now, you can pick someone like Mackenzie Dern, who went 25 minutes against Angela Hill and got the unanimous win. I mean, she landed double the amount of significant strikes, took her down 3 times, and controlled her for 13 minutes on the ground. I mean, that's laughable. That's laughable. I could see totally the same thing happening against Jessica Andrade, to be quite honest. So, yeah, you're getting money from me on Dern or no money at all.
No, yeah, that's yeah, you're right on. Like, it depends what version of Jessica Andrade shows up come Saturday night. She's a strong girl too, so it's gonna be. She can make it hard to hold her down too, but ultimately, I think Dern has been looking better and better as her career goes. And like you said, I don't know if I'd write off so much just the experience Andrade has had because, like, for example, like I also have like Gary Prochazka, and he's he's got 32 fights in his career, and he's only 31, so he's not that far off. Like when you think of it like that, there's other fighters too that have a lot of experience like that. It's just I think today the UFC is just now we're starting to see more like 7-0, 8-0, 10-0 type of people, or like 10-1 or something like that. Um, but it's just I feel like they're doing the recruiting as of lately. But that being said, yeah, you know, this is that female fight that I think it can go either way as well. But I'm feeling stronger about Dern. But again, she's my one weight, and you feel a lot stronger on Dern than I do, and she's your two weight.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Well, that wraps it up here for us at Moneyline MMA. It was a nice long episode for you guys, recapping UFC 295 and all of our picks. Feel free to rewind a little bit and get our picks. We always start with our most confident and move on. So definitely let us know down in the comments below if you agree with Jose or I on the main or co-main events, as we disagreed on both. Otherwise, thanks for listening. And as always, we will return with the UFC every Monday afternoon around 5:30, 5:45 to discuss the upcoming fights. See you guys next week.